What's up, Shredders? Drew Creel here. In this video, what I'm going to do is share with you guys my recording process for how I write and record metal music. So it should be a pretty fun and exciting and nerdy video where we kind of peel back the layers and I'll talk about the equipment that I use, the plugins that I use, kind of how I track guitars, how I generate riff ideas, and a little bit about drum programming too. We'll kind of cover drum sounds and how I approach making drums basically in a DAW. You might be asking yourself, why is this guy qualified to make a video like this? And to be honest with you, I don't consider myself to be a professional mixing engineer or producer, but I do make a lot of music, and how I record music here at home, kind of in demo form, it typically ends up being very close to what you actually hear on a finished product. So just a couple finished products that I can share with you that's out for you guys to listen to. The most recent one is this record called Psalms Unto Caesar. It's by an artist named Sepulcher, which is an anonymous black metal project, and I was just hired to track guitars on this. I did not write any of the music, but if you like melodic black metal, or more old school melodic black metal, I think you'll enjoy this. This album was featured on Black Metal Promotions, which is on it's on YouTube, and I think there's like over 30K streams of this record. So it was very well received. People were very kind to me about the guitar playing. They really enjoyed some of the solos, and pretty intense, really fast guitar playing on this record that you guys can check out. But this was something that I was involved in creating. Now, a year prior to that, back in 2024, I released Zaphon, which is my personal music project. This is more of a death metal, sort of blackened death metal, doom metal thing. But I'm really happy with how this record turned out. I recorded everything on this record just how you're going to see it here, and I then sent off the tracks to be mixed by Brandon Adams, and then we had another producer master the music. But I'm really happy with how this turned out. You can order a copy of this on Bandcamp. You can stream it on all streaming platforms. Almost a decade prior, more than a decade prior, I did this record, which is called Mirror, and this is a post-rock ambient guitar record. There's 4 different drummers on this record, like lots of guest soloists, but this was a huge project that I did back in 2014, which you could find this on Bandcamp. It's not available on streaming services right now, but I'm currently working on a follow-up to that record, which I'm really excited about, and that has been in production for several years here in the studio. First, what I want to talk about is just the equipment that you might need to record and make music if you're trying to get into recording. And so the first thing that I'll mention is you do need a powerful computer. You need something that has, at least multiple core processing. I'm using, I believe, like an 8-core processor, a Ryzen 7 processor, and then I do have a lot of RAM on my particular machine. But I built this machine back in 2018. I ordered it from Digital Storm, which is a great computer company. And this computer has held up really well. I'm just running Windows 10. I was going for the most bang for the buck. How much processing power can I get for the least amount of money? Which is why I kind of steered away from Mac stuff. Although I have heard really good things about the Mac M processors that are out there, the M1, 2, 3, 4. I think they're on like 5 now or something. Those are great machines to work with as well. I think you do need a powerful computer to make music. As far as peripherals go, I've just got 2 4K 32-inch monitors. It's because I do a lot of video editing here too. So you may not need that much power to do music recording, audio recording, but I would just go for as much as your budget can afford. Something that I'd also recommend is get a lot of RAM, because it's going to be helpful for your VSTs. I'm running Superior Drummer with a massive drum library. For many years, it did fine on 16 gigabytes of RAM, but more recently I upgraded to 64 megabytes of RAM, and it's been awesome. It's been a lot smoother, just really like DSP heavy drum software stuff. So I just wanted to mention that first. So computer, you also are going to need an interface. I think most guitar players just need a 2-channel interface, because most of the time you're not going to be tracking more than 1 or 2 tracks at a time. Maybe stereo guitar would be something you would need. I use my interface for vocals and for guitar and bass, and I usually just go direct into the interface. So something with a high Z input is essential. There's so many great options out there. If you're brand new with like a Focusrite Scarlett or Claret interface, that's going to be just fine for most guitar players. I'm using the PreSonus HD8, and I got that interface because I needed more mic preamps for the podcast that I was running. We've been doing up to 6 mics at a time on the show, so I needed more mic pre's. That's a really amazing platform, the PreSonus Quantum platform. Look into that if you want something that's really high quality, but also very affordable. If you're making metal music, the next really important piece of gear that you're probably going to need is some type of drum software. So I'm going to show you what I have here. I use Superior Drummer, and I'll go into more detail about this, but I've been with Toontrack since 2008, and back when EZdrummer came out, the drum kit from hell, and that drum kit was awesome. I released an album called Carl the Christmas Squirrel with those drums, and it sounded awesome. It sounded great for at the time, 2008, a long time ago. But I think you just need to pick some type of drum software that interests you. So that could be Get Good Drums. It could be RS Drums, which is Anoop Sastri's drum VST company. Heard really great things about that. Oldahome Drums, I've heard wonderful things if you're into like modern metal. Those are all great options, but I do think you need to pick something and just go for as high of quality as you can afford. I really like Superior Drummer because the drums sound really authentic and real, and I'm not one of these guys that needs the snare drum to sound like a cannonball or a shotgun. Like, I want it to really sound like a snare drum, and Superior Drummer allows me to do that. And so just to give you kind of a quick overview of the drum kit that I'm using in my session, I'm using the Death and Darkness pack from Superior Drummer. I bought it many years ago, and it's just been awesome. But I also have other things like the Area 33 and the Area 33 Origin. Those drums are crazy. You do need a lot of DSP on hand to run that, or a lot of processing power. Really anything, even EZdrummer from Toontrack would be a great choice. For a couple $100, you can get some really awesome sounding drums, and then you're off to the races. You can start programming drum beats. You can use some of their pre-made grooves. You can get some of these like death metal, black metal packs for like $29, and then you're jamming along to like a real pro drummer. As you can see here, I have a lot of these different packs. Just to show you really quick, here's what these drums sound like. Pretty nice, right? So there's so many different options for this. If I open up, China cymbals, for example, look at all of these Chinas that I have. I have way too many, right? So you probably don't need as much as I have here. If you're into drums and you want to see, you want a lot of options, you can certainly do that. There's more drum samples and guitar impulse responses on planet Earth right now than there are human beings. So there's so many options. Like, we'll never make it to the end of IRs, right? There's so many of them. So I think you just need to pick a lane and start making music. That's I'm all about being practical. I think people waste years of their life looking at options and, what guitar amp is my sound and this and that. And I just think you need to freaking pick a sound and start making music and change it as you go, as you develop as a guitar player. All right, let's get into it. Let's talk about the session that I have here. This is a project that I started over the summer with vocalist Nick Cross, and it's kind of like a slam tech project. And so as you can see here, we don't have a ton of tracks, okay? I've got the drums down here in green, bass, and then I have 2 direct in guitar tracks, and then I have 2 guitar tracks that I recorded with this Rev Gen 120 right behind me here. So typically when I'm making metal of any kind, I like to quad track things. But it all starts with me taking a riff idea and a metronome and jamming. Okay, so most of my ideas that I generate for my music comes from practicing guitar. Believe it or not, that's how I come up with stuff. I practice, right? Practicing can produce a lot of great results. Studying classical music, learning scales and what you can do with scales, learning functional harmony, those are all great things to look at as well. Another thing that you can do is just learn music from your favorite bands, from your favorite guitar players. I would definitely recommend doing that. Sheet Happens is a great place to go for like authentic tabs. More recently on the channel, I've done Defeated Sanity, Hate Eternal. A couple years ago, I did Meshuggah, Nile. A lot of those things, the reason why I learned those tunes is because I wanted to get inside the mind of the guys that make that high-level death metal music, the really fast, really intense, extreme metal stuff. A great way to go about learning how to play like that is just to learn their actual music. So that's why I make guitar covers on the channel. It's not to like show off or anything, but it's just to share with you guys, you know, like, this is how I come up with my ideas. I learn other people's stuff. So what I'm going to do now is go into how I track guitar. So let's talk about that right now. Okay, so as you can see on the screen here, I've got 4 guitar tracks. So typically how I record is just to the click. So I go direct into my interface and then I load an amp sim. In this case, I'm using Helix Native, which if you buy any Line 6 Helix product, I think you get a discount on Helix Native, and I was able to get this for like $100. But you can make pretty much any guitar sound imaginable in this you know, software. I know a lot of people love Neural DSP. That stuff is great, but what I don't like about Neural DSP is you're just buying like 1 or 2 amps at a time. Line 6's effects to me are like light years beyond things like Neural DSP, but their amp tones are incredible, and in fact, their amp tones made it on to my record here. I like Helix Native because it's basically like someone giving you a guitar store full of every amp ever made, pretty much. So you have that, you spend $100 on that, you get that. And so my first 2 layers of guitar are just recorded straight to the click, and it sounds like this. Okay, and for these guitar tracks, I'm using the PV Panama guitar on one side. You can see here, I've got the PV Panama. The IR that I'm using is an Ownhammer IR. I bought those years ago. And then on the other side, I have a different amp. I like to mix amps together, if you guys haven't noticed. Yeah, I'm using a 2204, like a Marshall JCM 800 amp on the right side. A lot of people are really particular about making sure it's the same exact tone on either side. I think that kind of takes a little bit of the fun out of it. I like having a different timbre. After all, we're dealing with distorted guitar, so they're not going to be incredibly different when it comes down to a mix, okay? Some people might argue with me on that. So I've got the 2 original tracks, and I record those directly to a click, and sometimes I'll even map out an entire song. And then from there, I go in and I start programming the drums. So if we take the click away, you'll see here, this is my drum program here. Okay, you know, I'll go through the entire song, lay out my idea just with the click to get the original guitar track nice and tight. Then I'll probably go through and program the entire song on drums, and you can see like there's a lot of information that goes into programming drums. Usually it takes me a couple hours to do like one song. You can also use like placeholder drums if you go into the groove area inside of Superior Drummer, for example, and you can load these different MIDI packs. You can play them, you can like demo them, listen to them. Sometimes they'll fit with the riff or the music that you're creating, and then you can go in and further customize those. I have done that a lot, but a lot of the time I'm just programming the drums. So how to program drums, that's probably for another video. You just figure out what each of these different instruments do, okay? And so, you know, the C and the B note here in the MIDI is kick drum. Usually map out like 2 measures at a time. I get kind of the basic drum beat. This is a ride cymbal. Here's a crash, snare. And what is happening here is in Cubase, it's triggering, you know, the drum set here inside of Superior Drummer. This is almost like a DAW within a DAW, and you can program your drums in here as well. If you go to, let's see here, Grid Editor, some of you guys might like to program your drums with a situation that looks like this, and you can certainly do that. I like to actually do it in Cubase. I also don't think it matters what DAW you choose. You pick any DAW. So that's kind of like how my song will sound. I'll do the entire song in sections. So I'll record the left side and then the right side and get it really tight, and then I'll just keep on moving through the song. The second riff kind of goes like this. Okay, you're probably wondering what these red guitar tracks are. This is a really violent and dirty sounding guitar sound, and it actually comes from this pedal from Lone Wolf Audio called the Season pedal. So I use this just for a really kind of custom tone that very few other people have, and I will actually run this into the Rev Gen 120, and on the back of that amp we have 2 notes torpedo, so it has 2 XLR outputs, and then I go into my interface from that. 2 notes torpedo has its own IR loader software that I can kind of fiddle around with and get it sounding sick. But let's listen to what those 2 tracks sound like. It sounds like this. So really super scooped, really just kind of nasty, honestly. But in the mix, I think it makes everything sound really super heavy. So typically what I'll do is I'll record, the direct in guitars so that we have something if we want to reamp or if we want to change the guitar plugin, tweak the tone after the fact, we have that. But then I also record something going in to the system that I can EQ it, but I can't really change it much after it's been recorded. With everything together, it sounds crazy. It sounds like this. Check this out. Pretty sick, right? Okay, let's talk about bass guitar. So as you can see down here in blue, I have my bass guitar, right? And I usually do this last. I do this after I record all of the rhythm guitars. I do that because I want it to be really tight with the drum track, okay? So the initial guitar idea is recorded to a click, then I program the drums, then I add another layer of guitars, and then I'll add bass. And what that will then do is glue all of the harmonic information that maybe you won't hear because of the distorted guitar. All of that starts to come together. I do that because sometimes I'll make a drum fill or do something on the drums that is gonna require the bass to do something different than what the guitars are doing. I don't consider myself to be like a full-time bass player, but I can play the bass fairly proficiently with my fingers and with a pick. So a lot of the time the bass is doing something different than the guitars. It's not just doubling the guitars the whole time. And I do that because I want the bass to kind of stand out. So for my bass tone, I'm using Plugin Alliance stuff, and they've got this really great sounding Ampeg SVT3 Pro thing that I have set up here as such. So I always have a tuner in there, kind of boring, right? And then I usually put a limiter on the bass to make sure all of the notes are sounding really even, and you can hear all the notes. And then I'll add another layer of compression after that with this optical compressor. So the bass guitar sounds a little something like this. So I really like my bass to sound clean in a metal context because you already have so much distortion from the guitar. So I like that nice clicky, punchy top end, a little bit of high mids, and then tons of like low end, right? To get that subsonic kind of frequency thing happening. That's basically it for guitars. I do use Plugin Alliance. I pay like $25 a month for that, and I have done that for years. So it ends up being around $250 a year to run basically pro grade plugins, and that kind of works out the best for my budget. I know people out there, they like to purchase plugins outright. I totally think that's great if you can afford it, but just buy what you need over time and build up a plugin collection. That's certainly one way of doing it. Or you can do the subscription model, which basically will give you everything you need, all of the plugins, all of the tools that you need to make a record that you could release. Okay, so check this out. Look at all of these different channel strips, delays, distortions, these are like amps. The UAD stuff is not Plugin Alliance. Compressors. There's just EQs. There's literally like way more than you're ever gonna use. But I just find that, you know, $250 a year on plugins for several years, yeah, it ends up being like $1,000. But some of these plugins by themselves will cost, like this amp plugin is probably like $99 or $150. In the past, I've bought plugins outright, but now the subscription model seems to work the best for me. Okay, moving on, let's talk a little bit about lead guitars. After I record the entire song with all the guitars and bass and get the drums programmed pretty much exactly how they're gonna be on the finished recording, I will then go in and do lead guitars. So for lead guitar, it looks like in this particular situation, I'm going into the rev, and it sounds like this. I'm probably using the red channel on the rev with some delays. So really, you could tell there we're going for like an ambient lead type of thing, just kind of sitting and floating over the top of the rhythm guitars to add some texture. And then moving on, I think we've got a guitar solo here in the song we can check out. Yeah, so, and then more kind of triad bass guitar stuff going on there. So a lot of the time I like to use my Malmsteen Strat for leads, which is right behind me. It just really cuts through the mix. It's a really expressive guitar because it has scalloped frets. So that's typically what I do for leads. Even though I'm playing like brutal metal, that's like my lead instrument. And if I need more frets, I'll just use the Kiesel 8-string, which has 24 frets on it. That's lead guitars. Sometimes we'll do vocals before leads, but as you can see here, we've got the vocals set up here in purple. This is Mr. Nick Cross, the vocalist of Divisive, and here's what he sounds like. He's an incredible deathcore metal vocalist. You know, here's what it sounds like without plugins. You know, right into the SM7B. That's typically the vocal mic that we'll use for brutal vocals. That way the vocalist can like hold that thing and scream into it. As far as vocal chain goes, this is something that's kind of been a revolving door of different plugins as of late, because I'm not really set on, you know, what I'm using yet. I'm not really in love with it, but I've been using this channel strip. This is like a Lindell channel strip. It sounds pretty good. So I've got a channel strip, and then I've got another channel strip. That's kind of weird. So probably want to take one of those away. And then I've got the purple compressor. I'm using the black box for a little bit of saturation, and then a de-esser, which takes some of the sibilance away, some of the top end, and then a limiter to make it really consistent in the mix. So that's what I'm using for the vocals. Once again, like, I'm not a producer. I'm sure other people that mix metal professionally and actually release stuff like on a more regular basis have a different chain, but I put that together recently and it's been sounding pretty good. But that's pretty much it. That's how a session looks for me. When it comes to programming drums, that's kind of one of the more detailed projects. I'll have to make another video on that topic. Essentially, that is how I have my sessions set up for metal recordings. Okay, so what we're going to talk about now is how I set up my buses. The first thing that I want to go into in a little bit of detail is this Superior Drummer thing. Okay, so what I have here is the drum kit. It sounds awesome inside of this world here, but to get it routed out and to actually stack more plugins on it, you have to go to this thing over here in the corner called Activate Outputs. So what I've done is I've activated all of the outputs which come from this mixer inside of Superior Drummer, and then it's going out into all of these individual drum channels that you can see here in kind of the green area. So I've got kick, snare, toms, hi-hat, ride, overhead, and room. That's typically how I set it up. And then from there, the drums are being sent into 3 different buses. So we've got 2 drum crushes and basically a reverb bus. Let me just really quick show you how I have those plugins stacked on each instrument. So if I solo the drums here, okay. So you can see that they're playing in these individual channels. On the kick, I have an optical compressor. I've got this thing called BX Boom, which adds a little bit of low end to the kick. And then I've got it going into a channel strip. And then each of these drum channels is going into these crushes that I mentioned earlier. So I'll get to those in just a second. But on the snare, I've got another optical compressor, which just helps it cut through the mix a lot better, and then a channel strip with, you know, a little bit more compression, and then I can EQ the drums. For the rest of the drums, I don't put a lot of stuff on there. For the room, I'll smash that room with a channel strip. I really like this Townhouse compressor as well, which sounds fantastic on the room. And then it looks like I'm using this other sort of compressor as well, which adds a little bit of dirt to it. From there, everything is going into those 3 buses. The first drum crush is a clean drum crush. The second one is a little bit distorted. And then the last one is just reverb. Although I will say most of the reverb that you're hearing comes from this environment inside of Superior Drummer. Okay, so this is kind of where the reverb comes from. So what I'm doing is I'm sending the room mics, the ambient overhead, ambient tube, ambient mono, ambient far, ambient near, all of that stuff is going into this room channel in my mixing desk here. So let me close, those are the crushes and the buses and the crushes. So it's this room mic here, or this room channel being smashed, and that's where a lot of the reverb and the character of the drums themselves come from there. So I've got buses for the drums. I've routed out the drums from Superior Drummer. I think that's really important if you want more professional sounding drums. And then the guitar, the rhythm guitars are in a bus, which what I do on that bus is add a little bit just of light compression, and then a channel strip where I can EQ the guitars even further. And then I put this thing called the shred spread on top of that, which just make the guitars sound really wide and heavy from either side. So each rhythm track is panned, you know, either hard left or hard right. You know, those are all sent to one particular bus. And essentially what my buses are doing is they're adding like a parallel EQ to the original guitar, okay, and it's sitting side by side, and that's all being sent to the stereo out. I have a bass bus, which on the bass bus enhance certain frequencies, as you can see here. So I've got like the really low end is being enhanced, and then right about 10K, that's what's giving that bass that nice clanky kind of sound. Lead guitar bus, just another channel strip and a little bit of delay. And then room, right? So a reverb rather, putting some reverb on the guitars. So that's kind of how I have that set up. And then of course I have a vocal bus as well. All the vocals are going to this thing. I have this male vocal nastifier setting on there that I created, and then a little bit of delay, and then a little bit of room reverb on I keep saying room, but it's just reverb on the vocals, man. So I just dial in a specific vocal reverb, and that's pretty much it. That's how I'm routing out all of everything. That's how I'm getting all of my buses set up. Well, there you go, guys. That is my video on how I record metal music here at my home studio. I hope you found this to be somewhat enlightening. Hopefully you got an idea of how you could get started recording. And I think the key is just to, you know, get a few pieces of equipment together. The essentials would be the computer and the interface. Just figure out what you can do with the bare minimum for a while and actually start creating with that. And then over time, add different things like different drum expansion packs and guitar sim plugins and things of that nature. This took me a long time to build this setup that you're seeing here. So if it looks overwhelming, or it's like, man, this guy's got a lot of stuff, it's because I do have a lot of stuff, but keep in mind, it took me about the better half of a decade to put all of this together. So it's a journey. you have to start your journey at some point if you want to make music and record music. And so I just want to be an encouragement to you. Drop me some comments in the comment section if you have any tips and tricks you want to share with me. If anything helped you, let me hear about it in the comment section. And if you're not subscribed yet, please subscribe. I look forward to connecting with you here on YouTube. So wherever you're at in the world, have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one.